Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, great leaders, great scholars. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Majola from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. Thank you so much for another session that we are going to have tonight. We meet every Wednesdays as leaders, as academics from different universities. We meet to empower each other, to develop each other, to correct each other, to admonish each other, to inspire each other. Yes, because we believe that leadership is a journey. Leadership is not a destination. So great leaders have to constantly develop themselves. And if you do that, you'll never find yourself obsolete. You'll be always um, empowered and developed as you are leading yourself and as you are leading other people. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to have a wonderful time this evening. I understand there's a heavy storm around in Johannesburg. Some of our colleagues might be affected, but we'll continue as we always do. They will find us on the way. May I welcome our leaders, our regulars, our members. We meet every Wednesdays and we empower each other. We really develop each other and we learn a lot from each other because we believe here that we always converge here to learn, to unlearn, to relearn, and to co-learn as we meet every Wednesdays. Tonight, we are discussing a very important topic. But before I get to the speaker, let me welcome those colleagues who are joining us or who might be joining us for the first time. If it's your first time joining this platform, we are so welcome. And please do participate, enjoy yourself. This is the community of leaders. We always say it's a leaders talking to other leaders. So please don't hold back. Yeah, just enjoy yourself and participate as well. We'd like to hear from you and we'd like to learn from you. Tonight we are discussing a very important theme or leadership topic that has to do with agility, agile leadership. And my brother Yershen Pillay, who's our speaker tonight, is not a stranger in this platform. He has addressed this platform many a times, and I'm so humbled and grateful, my brother Yershen, that always when we invite you. In the midst of your busy schedule, you always find time to say, man, yes, let me come and mingle with the leaders there. Let me come and address the leaders. So, as I said, we come a long way with Yershen. He's a brother of mine. I've learned a lot from him, and he's running a very big CETA, which is a chemical center. I've been there, I've seen what he's doing. I was so amazed at his humility. There was a time when I've done a couple of work for Cheetah, and there was a time when he invited me to facilitate an executive strategic session, and I came back. You don't know this one, Yershen, but I'm going to confess tonight. I came back and my wife was asking, how did it go? And I said, it went very well. But you know, one thing that struck me is the humility of the CEO. You know, we are sitting there in this big boardroom with his executives, but you must just listen how he addresses them, how, you know, the level of humility, the respect. But the man is assertive, you can feel that he's very assertive, but the way, I mean, that's what sometimes leaders do, and you'll never be aware about it, but we'll always pick it up. So that is your feedback tonight. As I said, I've never told you about this. So very, very humble, but very assertive. As I'm saying that he's leading this big CETA, which is a chemical CETA or industry CETA, and then it's very big, but he has done so well. And you can just see the things that he's doing in communities, the projects, the program that is starting, a visionary, yeah, and innovator, It seems like the man is always dreaming all the time. Whenever you ask him, you're dreaming that tomorrow what I must start, what I must introduce, what is the new thing that will start. So we are very happy, Yershen, that you are with us tonight. As I'm saying that our colleagues are so looking forward to hearing from you, to learning from you. Always when you address us here, we learn a lot from you. There are a couple of colleagues who have joined us in the last few months or a year, maybe have not heard you before, and I know that they're looking forward to hear from you. But those who have been with us for a while, they know you very well and they've heard from you very well. So over to you, my brother. Agile leadership, you can address us now. For those who are joining us for the first time, so what's going to happen, the speaker will address us, and then we'll interact with him and with us, obviously in a conversation once he has addressed us. So we kind of not disturb the speaker or interrupt the speaker while he's speaking. But once he has done with his speech, or rather with his presentation, then we can open up the time for questions and answers. Over to you, Mr. Play. Thank you, sir. Thanks, my brother.
Thank you, Prof. Majola. And it's always a great pleasure to be on your excellent platform, this learning platform for leaders. I'm truly humbled by your words of. I think really it's humbling to receive that type of feedback, and I think we can only learn and grow from feedback that we receive. And thank you for that, and for ensuring that we do create these types of platforms for more discussion about how to lead more effectively. I've always viewed myself as a learning CEO so every day is an opportunity to learn. So hopefully during today's discussion, one can, I think, if you take just one takeaway from this presentation on agile leadership, then I think one would have served the purpose, Prof. Mazwe, of what you intended to achieve with this discussion. I just prepared a few notes just for the purposes of having a discussion, really, not as a lecture, but just to give some insights, and also based on some of our experience, or at least my experience over the last few years as the CEO of the chemical CETA, so that one can just have some insights around agile leadership. Why is it so important? What is it, and how does one go about it in the workplace, especially? But I thought, as always, Prof, it's probably best to start off with the question, why the need for agile leadership? And I think my points around this is to firstly put together this argument that, the world has changed. We're living in a digital-first world that's driven by data and algorithms. So, data is the resource that fuels every strategy today. Without data, we're unable to derive new insights for decision making. So we have to curate and craft our strategies today for a world that's really based on algorithms. So data has changed the way we do things, and the volume of data keeps growing. I think I saw an interesting stat that in 2021, and one can only imagine that in 4 years ago, we had about 74 zettabytes of data that was being churned out throughout the world. Today, much more than that, as you can imagine. So we've got this growing volume of data that can be analyzed to have much more deeper insights into effective decision making. What we're also witnessing is this stakeholder expectations that are rising at a faster rate than ever before. So your stakeholder wants and demands and needs are much greater than they were. And it's not on an annual basis. It's not even on a monthly or quarterly basis. It's not even on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's even on a daily basis, if not faster than that. So we're seeing that your stakeholder expectations are quite varied, and one needs to understand those stakeholder expectations and how to respond to those. But we also live in this VUCA Barney world. Some may have heard of this concept of VUCA, the Barney world: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And then we have these levels of uncertainty that we've never seen before. We don't understand problems such as youth unemployment, etc., which are highly complex and very difficult to address. And so leaders need to develop agility to stay ahead and seize new opportunities, because with every challenge comes an opportunity. But to seize the opportunity, one needs to be very agile. We also see that technology has transformed human behavior. So speed matters. Dr. David Burkus says that the only thing faster than fast is sudden. So today we talk about not a fast service, but a sudden service. You have an example that he makes of PAL franchise in the US, which claims to deliver burger and fries in 18 seconds. That's 3 times faster than McDonald's. And that shows that organizations today are focusing more and more on speed. How do you deliver a service? So it's not just about execution. The speed of execution matters. And this is as a result of technology enabling us to deliver faster services. And then finally, to respond to this context of automation, AI, ever-increasing disruption, one needs to remain relevant. One needs to remain responsive to the stakeholder needs that I mentioned, but also to be more competitive. And so for these reasons, there is a need for agile leadership. So if that is the case, the question then becomes, well, what is agile leadership? Well, agile, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is defined as being able to move quickly and change direction with ease. So these are the 2 defining characteristics of agile. But agility in the organizational sense involves the whole organization, not just parts of it. So you can have agility maybe in one part of your organization, in one unit, in one department, but that doesn't really define you as an agile organization. You need to be agile as an entire organization. So the entire ship must turn. It's not possible for one part to turn with speed while the other is really quite slow in terms of how it is responding to issues and challenges. But it also means developing a read and react capability. So you're able to sense and seize the opportunities. And that really means that you've got to be responsive to the context and be able to react to that context in a very quick and effective and swift manner. The speed of processing a decision determines how agile you are. So you pick up a pattern here, Prof, where one is referring to speed. And that's what agility centers around, the cornerstone of it. So it's not just about getting things done. It's getting things done quickly with speed in a sudden way. And that determines how agile you are. And agile leader is a connected leader. So what do I mean by a connected leader? Well, a connected leader connected leadership is about a stakeholder-centric leadership. One of the things I make time for is really to connect frequently with stakeholders. So you need to interact with your stakeholders on a regular basis. This means spending less time in the boardroom, spending more time in the field. Understanding what is it that your stakeholders want and what is it that they don't want. Interacting with administrators. So gone are the days where you would say that because you are a senior executive or a CEO, there's no need to interact with an administrator. That feedback could be essential in identifying either a pain point or a pleasure point in your organization in order to deliver a delightful service to your stakeholder for that matter. So it's really about being connected or being able to connect with your team at all levels, making time for that. We have regular stakeholder engagement sessions. We have regional skills forums, for example, where one makes time to connect with not only the team members, but stakeholders. And this is what connected leadership is all about. Agile leaders are connected leaders. And then finally, very critical, is an agile leader is both an enabler and a disruptor. And you need to be both. So I'll spend more time on this because I think it's quite essential, Prof. An enabler is someone who is socially responsive. So they make time to, just not only absorb what are the needs and demands of their stakeholders, but responding in a very nuanced way, a very tactful and strategic way to addressing what those needs and demands are. But enablers also have clarity of direction. So it's not just about setting a vision, but it's also about ensuring that you actively engage with your team, communicate that vision, and participate in the realization of that vision. But essentially, the team knows that this is the direction we are going in, and this is the final destination for what we are setting out. So we understand why we are on this trajectory. Then enabler also provides empathy and trust. Empathy, not the same as sympathy. Empathy is when you are actually in the shoes, on the chair. You understand, you feel the concerns of your stakeholders, etc. But essentially, you also create this environment of trust where there's a high degree of confidence in your team and in your ability of the organization to deliver. You facilitate this highly trusting environment. But enablers are also empowering. They make sure that you are developing new leaders at the same time and collaborating. So they bust silos, they break down, these siloed effects within the organization, so that there's a lot more teamwork and collaboration and more synergy in the organization. So these 5 characteristics define an enabler. But an agile leader is not just an enabler. An agile leader is both enabler and a disruptor. So you've got to disrupt the status quo. One of our board members calls it, sometimes Chieta as a CETA, we are positive deviant, in the sense that you are disrupting with the good intentions, but to make a difference so that you make a greater impact. But to be a disruptor, one also needs to be thoughtfully decisive and not just decisive. And I'll come back to this concept of being thoughtfully decisive. And that really means that you are much more calculative, more measured, not as rash as making emotional decisions, but you're making emotionally intelligent decisions that are based on data, facts, on respective experiences in the field. Secondly, a disruptor is digitally literate. So you've got to be able to have the digital skills as well, the digital know-how in a digital-first world. And that means being both data literate, which being able to understand this data, how to work with it, how to use it for generating new insights, but at the same time also being cyber literate, being digitally literate for that matter, which is 2 different concepts, where you're not just working with computers and the internet, but also being able to use and apply digital technologies such as AI, virtual reality, augmented reality. And that is quite essential today in order for one to be agile, because you've got to use that technology, as I mentioned, in terms of why is this so important, in order for you to respond, to be much more responsive in a shorter space of time. Then questioning the status quo. So, but doing so in a way that is constructive and not chaotic. So you're generating a more facilitative environment where the status quo, you're never satisfied. So there's a culture of dissatisfaction. Disruptors create a culture of dissatisfaction, not a culture of satisfaction. You're always dissatisfied. What that means is that the culture is one that is always seeking to be better. You focused on yourself and how to be better, and not necessarily just doing things, for the sake of it. Fourth, I think, characteristic is that you're also busting silos, making sure you drive collaboration, and importantly, being a creative thinker. And that means coming up with novel ideas. You mentioned dreaming, Prof. Dreaming is a good thing where you're always dreaming about creating new opportunities, creating new things. You're never fully satisfied with the status quo because you've never really made an impact So we need to do things better. So I thought this table just provides a summary of what an enabler and a disruptor looks like, the 5 characteristics of being an enabler and a disruptor. And importantly, I think, Prof, one of the key points for me is that to be an agile leader, you've got to be both an enabler and a disruptor. So it's not enough for you simply to be an enabler or a disruptor. You have to adopt all of these characteristics if you are to be an agile leader. Fundamentally, experimentation is the highest virtue of an agile leader. Now, when we talk about experimentation, it depends on how you look at experimentation, because some experiment with the aim of proving what they want to be proved, or others experiment with the aim of improving. And it's always better to experiment. There's an interesting concept, Prof, that you should experiment like a wasp and not a bee. So if you think of a wasp, when wasps enter your home, they escape easily by moving across your window panes. Unlike a bee that's just focused on one pane, trying to find an escape point on the same window pane. So with a wasp, they're more looking at moving across frames. And the real point is that you should conduct your experiment on different frames and in different circumstances, in different contexts. Why? Because one of them may provide an unanticipated opening. So you should allow for emerging or new insight. But when you experiment like a bee, you're testing, you're iterating, and you're reiterating on the same frame. So you don't actually learn because you're trying to prove instead of improve. And it's important that when one experiments, we experiment with, so you test to improve, not just to prove. You welcome surprises, you welcome new proposals, you welcome negative feedback, because it's that negative feedback that could lead to new insights, greater opportunities that could be seized later. So what does agility look like? Well, it does not, this is what it does not look like, Prof. Agility does not look like a super tanker. And if one knows a super tanker, as you can see, I deliberately took this picture because it takes time to turn. So what agility does not look like is something like this, which is a super tanker, but it does look like this, a speedboat. So you can notice a speedboat turns very quickly. And so agility looks like a speedboat and not a super tanker. You've got to be able to turn quickly, be much more responsive, exercise that's sudden service that you're able to prove. So to win in a digital first world, an organization must be transformed from a super tanker into a speedboat. And that's how one can achieve agility. That's what agility looks like in practice. So how does one become an agile leader? Well, firstly, one needs to think slow, to act fast, quite counterintuitive, but logically it does make sense in the sense that you have to create more time, at least an hour a day for deep thinking. Because in order to be thoughtfully decisive as well, one needs to have thought about the process, the context, how to connect all of this in a way that is able to make an effective decision in a very short space of time. So you have to have that time to think about the problem before one moves to act fast with the solution. Then we need to think agile to become agile. So it's all about mindset. If we're going to think like a super tanker, we will move slowly. But if you're going to think like a speedboat, you will move with speed. You need to prioritize contextual intelligence to read and react better. The one thing that I do a lot, and for my board especially, is to spend a lot of time on the context and painting a picture of the context. What does the context look like? What are the factors we need to consider? What are the emerging trends that are out there, the patterns that both at a macro, meso, and micro level, so that we understand both the global picture as well as the local picture. And based on that contextual intelligence, we can read and react better. Then you need to foster a culture of both learning and experimentation. This is quite essential as well. But importantly, with learning and experimentation, is that the learning must translate into action. So learning without action doesn't really make an impact. It's insufficient. So we need to create opportunities for learning in the workplace, whether it be workplace libraries, etc. But with experimentation, one needs to resource experimentation. At Chieta, we have 6 values, and one of those values is experimentation. So it's okay to play, it's okay to experiment, to investigate, to test, to iterate and reiterate. But we've also resourced it. So we've put 3 million Rand towards experimentation, which is outside of your performance evaluations. We delinked the innovation engine from the performance engine. Innovation engine can mix water and oil, so it runs on its own. But in that engine, one is able to experiment. You can conduct your own thought experiments. You can look at how to bring gaming into skills development and training as an example. And what we're trying to do over the next few years is to resource that. So we've put 3 million Rand aside to fail so that one can experiment on how to improve and contribute better to sustainable livelihoods and skills development and training. And then lastly, one can develop the 4 attributes of an agile leader. And these are the 4 attributes of an agile leader before I come to them. But also, when you're agile, Prof, you need to be able to box on the front foot. And not just step back all the time. So what agility also looks like is being able to box on the front foot. And to develop the 4 attributes of an agile leader, this was by Simon Hayward, we've tried to put this into practice, and I've tried this in my role as well as a CEO of the chemical sector, is to say, well, firstly, you need to learn constantly. So learning must be who you are. Always turning every moment into a learning moment. So there's nothing that should be considered as silly. We need to make sure you create the time, space, and opportunity, both formal and informal learning. So we have an in-house library as well at the chemical sector where you can pick up a book and just learn, but also create coffee, your sort of coffee, around the coffee type of discussions. Have a coffee and learn a new idea, engage about something that came up. Will it work? Won't it work? With some of your colleagues. So learning is something that should be practiced constantly. Then you need to practice empathy as well. And this is essential because, empathy is really just, making sure that we understand and feel together, so that when we win together, but when we lose, we equally lose together. And I think it's also about making sure that everyone feels valued, everyone feels that they've got support, and that everyone just makes sure that I'm not just feeling for you, but I'm feeling with you. Now, an interesting question here is, when is it too much empathy and when is it too little empathy? Maybe we can have a discussion about that, Prof, because that could be something that also determines success. Thirdly is this concept of being thoughtfully decisive. And here again, as I mentioned, it's not just about being rash when one goes into decisions for that matter. It's really about understanding how is it that we can just make sure that we are more calculated, be able to think about things much more deeply and spend time on that. And then the 4th attribute is being digitally literate. So having the skills, the knowledge, the know-how of being, adopting technology and how to apply that technology in order to be more effective in driving decisions and decision-making. So something that I wanted to introduce, something that I practice, is this idea of leading to learn and learning to lead. And what this actually means is that, it's important when you are agile that you lead to learn and learn to lead. So I learn more in order to lead better. If I acquire new knowledge, if I acquire new skills, if I have a greater network of people, if I have more relational intelligence, I'm able to lead better. So how do I do this? By creating diverse teams. Diversity matters because your pool of ideas are greater. You can tap into people with different values, different customs, different traditions, and get different responses. But if you have the same people, it means that you're going to generate the same ideas, and at some stage will be obsolete. So it's always best to have diverse teams because you will see greater results and better outcomes just because you will be generating much more You'll have greater depth and breadth at the same time if you have more diversity. But if you're within the same network, if you think about it, Prof, you are always with the same people. So you're thinking the same, acting the same, behaving the same. And so you're highly unlikely to innovate or do things differently. Multiple networks, whether that be networking online through LinkedIn, for example, or just creating networks both physically, just meeting regularly with different people over coffee, just to discuss new ideas, brainstorming regularly, acquiring new skills. Even if you're learning a new skill, whether that be every 3 to 6 months, or at least setting a goal for the year that this year one will acquire a new skill. And hopefully it will be a digital skill to improve your digital literacy, which then helps you to also be much more of an agile leader. And then I practice this idea of leader as a learner, that one as a learning CEO, that you always see yourself as every opportunity is an opportunity to learn something new, to increase your database of ideas, so that one can have a great expanse of being able to respond. But at the same time, you're leading with the objective of persuading others to learn more. So every moment is a learning moment. And how do we do this? Well, we do this through creating workplace libraries, for example, safe learning spaces. One of the ideas practically that I introduced, Chieta, is the idea of a learning moment at management meetings. So what we do, Prof, is that we understand that, a ritual can shape your culture, and your culture can therefore enable success. So part of our ritual as a learning organization is we have a learning moment before you start a management meeting or any meeting. A team member is given an opportunity in 5 minutes to share something that is both useful and relevant to the organization. So as a CETA, for example, we would not encourage a learning moment where someone will tell us about the 10 different types of clouds. We're not a weather bureau. It's very interesting information, but it's not useful to us. But perhaps what might be useful to us as an education and training authority is perhaps talking about agile leadership, or perhaps talking about just different forms of learning and development, or digital transformation, or some new idea, kindness, or just better management tools or practices. So in 5 minutes, every team member gets an opportunity to share a learning moment. We have a discussion about that. And so you start as your ritual, as a learning organization, in terms of leading to learn with some of these types of rituals. And that's just but one example, Prof, that I wanted to share. That's something we've applied as a ritual that shapes a learning culture, which then enables agility and being able to innovate better at shared. And then I think finally is just modeling leader behavior. So, if at the top you are not leading to learn and learning to lead, then you should not expect your staff to do so, or anyone who's reporting to you. So it's got to be leadership by example. And so if we see the CEO picking up a book and reading, one is likely to do so. And so that's, I think, also quite essential. And so this is what it means in terms of, being leading to learn and learning to lead. And that's, I think, quite essential in terms of agile. Now, just coming back to this thoughtfully decisive. So Simon Hayward introduced these 5 steps to train yourself to be thoughtfully decisive. And the first step is really to pause. So pause, the ability to pause is a skill. What we often do is, when our emotions get the best of us, we tend to react emotionally, either in a defensive or an offensive way. So you've got to train yourself in terms of just setting up agile mindset to pause. So you pause quickly, consult with speed. Now, sometimes people think consulting is to call someone. You can consult with Google on your phone for that matter. Is this relevant? What are the main things that I should consider? Something that you can type into ChatGPT, for example, just to get some, advice or some guidance on this idea. Then you decide, you make a decision on which direction you'll be taking. You move with confidence, and then finally you review your idea. So this is the 5 steps to be thoughtfully decisive and not simply decisive. And it's quite an important attribute of thoughtful of agile leadership. So agility, just coming back to this notion, Prof, of leading to learn and learning to lead, it involves duality. And duality is this concept by Scott Fitzgerald, who says, it's the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your mind and being able to function well at the same time. So what I mean by this is that I am leader and follower at the same time. So I understand what it means to be a leader, and I understand what it means to be a follower, and I can use that duality in my understanding to decide what's best at any given moment. So do I turn left or turn right, whichever direction one turn, after assessing the context, the contextual intelligence that I have in order to make more effective decisions. So duality is something I've also introduced over and above the literature on agile leadership, something that's quite essential in the workplace, so that you also understand your stakeholder needs in a much more deep and nuanced way. And that enables you to turn faster as well, like as a speedboat would do. So I thought finally, Prof, is just to my recommended read for anyone who's interested in agile leadership is The Agile Leader by Simon Haywood. I think it's a great book with some great tools as well that one could acquire in trying to develop the skill of agile leadership, or the skill of being able to pause to be more thoughtfully creative, or the 4 attributes that I mentioned as well. Quite an interesting read, and something I'd like to leave with the leaders on the group as well, just for further reading from today. So finally, Prof, just some concluding remarks. I think when we talk about agile leadership, execution is not enough. The speed of execution matters. And so one of the things that I say to my team is that by nature, I'm quite an impatient person, but that impatience can be both a vice and a virtue. And the impatience in terms of a virtue forces one to act and move quickly. So everything we try to do, it's not just about getting it done, it's about being sudden with our response. And if it's about issuing out whatever information, delivering a program, or it's doing it in the shortest space of time. We were rolling out our smart skills centers, which were large-scale infrastructure programs, sometimes in the space of 3 to 6 months, which would probably take you more than 12 to 18 months to do. So we could see how this culture of just gearing up your mindset for speed of execution then generates results. Then be nimble, being able to just be quick, be adaptive, respond with the sense of purpose as well, and be what's the word? Just light on your feet, so that you can respond at any point in time and be able to change direction, sort of like a dragonfly does, hovering, being able to turn in various directions at various points in time. And then finally, I think, as I mentioned, agility involves duality. So sometimes you're a leader, sometimes you're a follower, and sometimes you both. So, Prof, let me leave it at that. Hopefully, we can have a discussion around this concept of agile leadership. Thanks, Prof.
Powerful, my brother Yershen. Thank you so much. Very insightful, very impactful, very thought-provoking. Thank you so much, my brother. You really gave us a masterclass on agile leadership. That's what exactly we wanted tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me not take your time. We can now engage with Yershen. We can do that by raising your hand and or via the chat room. So if there's anyone who wants to ask a question, please do raise your hand. Then we'll recognize you, and then we'll give you the platform to say something. I like your emphasis on I call it the power of and in leadership. That it's not either or, but it's and on both paradigm. As you put it very clear, that it's both enabler and it's both enabler and disruptor in agile. You've got to be enabler, but also while you are enabler, you disrupt. So leadership, it's about balancing polarities together as duality, or the concept of duality. Thanks, my brother. We really enjoyed your your lecture there. Your lecture there. I see. Dr. Mkolozeli is just some announcement there on the chat room. Let me just check with you while other colleagues are still coming. I see Dr. Chuma Mangisa there. Probably let me give a doc. Dr. Chuma Mangisa, I'll ask mine at a later stage. I always like to give people time, because I know that these are very busy people. They really sacrifice and make time to be here to engage. Dr. Mangisa, over to you, my brother.
Yeah, no, thank you, Prof. Majola, and thank you to Mr. Yershen Pillay. Indeed, a very well thought, designed leadership masterclass. Indeed, we appreciate your effort, your time, to put together, this very powerful, presentation. Indeed, the concept of agility, it's what must occupy us, as leaders and those who aspire, to be leaders. The question I have, for you, Yershen, organizational firms, they talk about what they would call a leadership philosophy. That this organization, this is the philosophy, from a leadership perspective that we would want to pursue. And unequivocally, you stated that at theater, agility or agile leadership, that's your philosophy. Now, the question that I have, we know, as leadership scholars, as well, that there are so many leadership styles and conventional leadership approaches. When did you decide that we need to pursue, as a cheetah, we need to pursue agile leadership as opposed to other forms or styles or approaches of leadership? When did you decide as the organization that perhaps this is what will take us, to the promised land as an organization? I have other questions, but I want to give others as well, Prof. Majola. Thanks, Yershen.
You can respond there, Yershen, and then we take other questions after that. Thanks, my brother.
Well, thank you, Prof, and thanks, Dr. Mangisa, for that excellent question. And absolutely, I think you're correct. Many organizations will have a leadership philosophy, but does that philosophy translate into action? Does it produce results? And I think that's what's quite important to us as well, to make sure that it's not what you say but what you do. So let's talk more action, making sure we get things done. In terms of the what you asked, we realized quite some time. So essentially, it was based on a number of factors. One is when the context changed. So when we post-COVID, I think the context changed quite dramatically. We had adopted a new strategy as well, a new vision to be an innovation leader in education and training. And so with a new vision, with a new final destination, we had to employ a new strategy. And it was not a strategy that valued efficiency so to speak. It was, not a strategy that only encapsulated transformation, but it was a strategy that said we need to do things differently. Why? Because we are not making an impact. We are number crunching. We are seeking to achieve key performance indicators within our traditional schools of thought of how you should run an organization. But if you look at your problems that we are faced with, so we are in the development industry, meaning that we said, Prof. And Dr. Mangisa, that we are no longer in the business of skills development and training. We are now in the business of sustainable livelihoods. And that's when things changed, because we knew that we had to contribute towards improving the quality of life. But to improve the quality of life, we needed to be more versatile, more agile as well. You needed to be more responsive, and you needed to do it quickly because the conditions were not going to tolerate, being patient with change. So we needed to make a greater impact. To make a greater impact, we had to be more agile. And that's when we then, decided that you can't wait to establish a smart skills center in 3 years when the digital skills divide between urban and rural communities is currently only 1.7% of our rural learners have access to digital technology. So we reduced that time to anywhere between 6 to 8 months to have a fully fledged smart skills center, for example, as a practical example of reducing that time for agility. It was based on those factors, but fundamentally, the context changing, the need to make a greater impact, and just being more responsive to a new breed of stakeholder as well in the development industry. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you. So in other words, it really requires that we've got to be intentional about it. As Yershen said earlier on, that it's not about driving a super tanker, but it's more about driving a speedboat when you're in agile leadership. So it's not gonna happen by itself. You've got to be intentional in your organization, and I like it when it starts from top. It makes that culture, as we're talking about rituals, it makes it easier in the organization because it's modeled. Other executives, other managers will learn from it, will model it. If we are saying in all our management meetings, we start by doing this, and then they will do it because they know that this is our Chieta way. That's who we are as we are doing something. Great stuff there, Yershen. And thanks, Dr. Mangisa. I see a hand there from Sister Bello. Over to you, my sister.
Good evening, Prof. Good evening to our esteemed speaker and the colleagues here. Very interesting, masterclass, as we've all said. And I think it also just reminds us of the kind of environment that we're working in or living in now, where, decisions that are taken with speed become critical. So 2 questions that I have. One is, how do you ensure that as you are being agile and, nimble in the decisions that you take, you still retain an alignment to the vision and objectives of the organization, so that it's not seen that, these agile decisions that have been taken are taking us away from, the objectives and strategic intent of the organization. Secondly, from a team point of view, if you're going to become an agile leader, how can one then bring one's team in a way that you minimize a team that feels like, oh my goodness, comes the leader again with a new idea. We're never sure whether this is where we are focused or there's something new, because they are practicing being agile. So, sometimes when you're leading teams, they kind of for a while want to have that comfort to know that's the direction we're taking. But if you're then going to be an actively agile leader, they might just feel like, hey, we don't know which direction we're taking now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, and thanks, Ms. Mukema, if I pronounce your name correctly. But I think, great questions. And you're absolutely correct, is that, it all starts with a vision. So, one thing we do is every presentation must start with your vision, so that you're constantly reminding every team member that, in our case, our vision is to be an innovation leader in education and training. So, without an understanding of that final destination, no matter what philosophy or strategy you adopt, it will never materialize. But it's also about constantly reminding, because as people, we can be very fickle. We don't often, recall or recollect what the vision is. So it's going to be and as you mentioned, I agree with you, Prof, deliberate and intentional in every form, in every way, every staff meeting, every stakeholder engagement, to be deliberate and intentional about reminding people about what is your vision, what's your final destination, and how is this going to help us to get there at the end of the day? How is this agile leadership or philosophy going to help us to get there? But it's also not enough to have a vision. I think one thing we've said, it's too simplistic to say having a vision is good enough. The question that then arises is, how does the CEO and the executives communicate that vision on a daily basis to each and every team member so that they understand it? But how is your team actively pursuing it as well, and actively participating in the rituals, in the day-to-day operations to realize that vision? Because if that participation from both your senior leadership, your C-suite executive managers, etc., is not there, then it's highly unlikely that you're going to realize that vision. And then that's when the rest becomes simple and quite easy to achieve at the end of the day. So absolutely, it starts with the vision, but it's not, I think, good enough as well. It's not simple. It's too simple to just have it. You've got to communicate it and actively realize it. And then I think, we often say with us, innovation is messy. So it might not necessarily be a bad thing when people are saying, well, it's too much agility. We're not really understanding what is it. Because sometimes what you do need is that unanticipated consequences to emerge, those fright proposals, those sudden exciting new ideas to emerge. And you got to, like that wasp that I made the example of, that unanticipated opening that you never really saw. That only emerges when it's a messy process, not when it's a neat and tidy one. So sometimes, it could be valuable to generate new and insightful ideas by allowing for the process to be much more important than the outcome, and just allowing the flow within the organization, so that these new ideas, because some of our best ideas did not come out of structured platforms. They came out of messy processes where staff members had light bulb moments. And I think that's often the underrated value from, not necessarily, saying that, no, look, if it's not structured, let's structure it. But we don't always have to structure things. And certainly not if you want to be more agile and innovative, to do things differently. Yeah. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you, sir. I see. Is it Dr. Mangisa? Dr. Mangisa, over to you, my brother. Do you want to make a follow-up there? Is your hand still up, Dr. Mangisa, or is it a mistake?
Yes,
Go ahead.
it is still up there.
Go ahead,
Thank
Papa.
you. Thank you so much, Yershen, for your articulation, my brother. Very appreciative. But just a follow-up, on what you are saying. I like the fact that you are the vision that resonates, with with theatre, it is that of innovation. And obviously, innovation and agility, or, leadership, agility, there is a correlation, directly, between the two. But reality, in South Africa now, and perhaps in the next, short to immediate term, economically, the country is not growing at the rate where it is supposed to be growing. And innovation talks to financial resources. And that's your vision. Now, putting all of this, especially that the economy is not growing, there is, depletion of financial resources in the country. How do you hope to sustain? How do you hope to sustain your vision? That's innovation through agile leadership when there is a cry in terms of financial resources within the country. Thank you so much.
Over to Yershen. Obviously, I know that we are talking here mostly about your organization that you are leading, Chieta. So maybe you may want to respond there on to Dr. Mangisa, speaking more about the country challenges that are there. But yeah, over to you, sir.
No, thanks, Dr. Mangisa. And look, I think it's pertinent questions, absolutely, very valid, something we do need to grapple with, because, one could argue that it's not development that creates growth or growth that creates development, but it's innovation that drives growth and development. So if you look at countries that perhaps are doing better, I would say, relatively within context, are there countries that have more innovation-driven economies with innovation-driven enterprises? Do they have more of innovation entrepreneurs able to come up, generate new ideas? So it could be that the problem can be turned into the solution, where we don't necessarily see innovation as this monumental challenge, but a brilliant opportunity. An opportunity for us to find new ways of doing things, to solve some of society's problems. So, for example, when we talk about the water problem in the country as a key developmental challenge, is it really a water problem, or do we need an innovation mindset to see the opportunity in this water problem, where we can actually turn the water problem into a water economy, that we are able to seize new opportunities, where we have new technologies that can harvest water from the atmosphere, for example. These water harvesters that we see, we had an interesting discussion with some of our colleagues at the University of Johannesburg. Now, you could have new economies with these new water technologies, turning the water problem into a water opportunity simply by developing an innovation mindset, as an example. So I think that as much as, I agree, it's important to resource innovation, because without the resources, you will never achieve what you set out to achieve in terms of your goals and outcomes. But some of the resources could actually be generated through the innovation itself. And we could actually then find much more, and I made the example of the water problem. So in essence, one of the things, Dr. Mangisa, we are looking at as Chieta, we've seen the opportunity in the green hydrogen economy as an example. We do not have an economy in the country, we don't export green hydrogen, yet there's if we have an innovation mindset, we should be investing a lot of our resources to develop their infrastructure for our green hydrogen economy, so that we could export this and create what the Department of Science and Innovation estimates as almost 14,000 new jobs for our people in the green hydrogen, and position the country as the green hydrogen leader. But of course, as you are correctly saying, we need to resource that, because that innovation costs money, it's expensive. But again, as I said, maybe it starts with the mindset, And from the mindset, we could turn the problem into an opportunity. Thanks, Prof. Thanks, Dr. Mangisa.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Yershen, what is your thought on the concept of creativity versus innovation? Where we, the society, the country, the nation, the organization, they produce people who are starters from scratch, people who are thinkers who can start something, as opposed to innovation. Innovation is something that is there. Maybe you just improve it, make it better, change it then there, and making it feels good. So what is your thoughts on that one? And then after your response, we'll take Lorado.
Prof, I think, yeah, fantastic, distinction that you make between creativity and innovation. And absolutely, I think, creativity is certainly a skill, so we need more creative thinkers for that matter in the economy. But at the end of the day, I think what the key distinction, for me at least, is that yes, you need creativity, but creativity stops at idea generation. So yes, we can have creative thinkers that are ideating and coming up with new ideas. But at the same time, it's not just the novel ideas, because I think for me that key difference is they are very nuanced concepts, although interlinked. But at the same time, one needs to understand that you need both creativity and innovation, both very nuanced. So with creativity, it's more about novel ideas, fundamentally new. But innovative ideas are both novel and non-novel ideas. So you can adopt and adapt. And I think that's where sometimes we get it wrong, in the sense that you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel or develop a fundamentally new concept or idea. It's simply about adopting and adapting to our context, which could lead to innovation for that matter. So, an innovation could be as simple as, these examples have been made, if I may reference them, to say just putting wheels onto a suitcase or putting a sensor on a suitcase. So taking two things that already exist and putting them together. But creativity, maybe we need both, where we need totally new ideas, novel ideas. So I think the two complement each other. And perhaps we need to, make that distinction as well, so that as much as they are, very interrelated, but we do need a high level of creative thinkers as well as a high level of innovators that can take an idea from generation to implementation and ensure that it is monitored and evaluated as well at the end. Because I think the key for me is the implementation part. Taking that idea to not just ideating, but implementing it so that we get feedback and we're able to iterate and generate new things. So if we don't have that distinction, Prof, my view is that, as an opinion, is that you could have a lot more talk and not less action. Because creative thinkers will come up with the ideas, but who's implementing these? Where are the innovators to channel these ideas to idea implementation? And I think that's where you need both in order to achieve some form of result or outcome.
Perfect, Yershen. Thanks, my brother. Well done there. Thank you so much. Let us take Lorato. Ask Lorato, over to you.
Thanks, Prof. Thank you very much, Yershen, for a very insightful presentation. Look, my question is very short and to the point. I just want to find out what your take is on the most common mistakes that you found amongst leaders when they transition from other styles of leadership to agile leadership. Because like you correctly put it in your presentation, agile leadership requires that you move at a speed of a speedboat instead of that of a tanker. So what are the most common mistakes leaders make when making that transition from your traditional leadership styles or other forms of leadership styles to the agile leadership?
Thank you, Leroto.
Thank you.
Thanks, my sister. Over to you, Yershen.
Thanks, Lerato. Great question. And I think just my own observations is probably three things that I would highlight. I think the first is seeking perfection, where as one transitions, you want to wait for an idea, or you spend too much time really trying to perfect the solution, and that waiting time just leads to your idea becoming obsolete. Someone has already put it into the market, someone has already tested it. And so you can't wait to seek perfection. If it's 50, 60% ready, you put it out there, you take the feedback, you iterate, you reiterate, and you move as quickly as possible without having to seek perfection. So you're never going to really achieve perfection. If you're going to seek perfection, you're not going to be innovating, because tomorrow there's a new idea, there's a new solution, and I think that's one of the things I've found that in terms of a barrier or some of the challenges is one tries to just make sure the idea is perfect before they put it out there, or that the solution is perfect. Then the second thing is really about I think just not understanding as well the assumptions, so making the wrong assumptions, because the assumptions are fundamentally different as well. So if you're going to come with your same set of assumptions, so I think, yeah, it's also about making wrong assumptions, because the assumptions you make if you were pursuing transformational leadership, or more transactional leadership, or more leadership based on efficiency, cutting costs, for example, in order to generate more income, for that matter, or the assumptions are totally different. So you've got to change your level of assumptions as well, and you're working with a totally different set of assumptions when you're pursuing agility and innovative leadership, where here you're assuming that you're never going to be right, for example. Don't seek perfection. Tolerate high levels of risk tolerance, for example, or high levels of risk appetite, as an example. So that's the third thing. And I think finally from my side, I think it was failure. I think one of the things that I've observed is that it's sometimes very difficult to grasp this concept of embracing failure, because our systems, if your organization was not born digital or born agile or born innovative, you've got to make that transition to it. But making that transition is a difficult one, because your systems are not geared to tolerating failure. And failure is essential for being more agile and being more innovative as well. But to have someone understand why it's okay to fail, and you can learn from that failure, but learn quickly and with as little resources as possible, so that you don't cost the organization too much, is often something that I've also found is very difficult for your team members to grasp. So we, for example, had a great discussion when we were resourcing this, to say we were putting 3 million rand to fail. And it became quite a contentious issue as to, if I fail, then I will be punished for this. And that might lead to lower performance bonuses, for example. So my measurements are not geared or designed, and how I'm measured is how I behave, of course. So you've got to redesign your measurements to tolerate failure, to reward it, but you could also reframe it. So we reframed it as not failure, but experimentation. So it's no longer 3 million rand to fail, it's 3 million rand to experiment, for example. And that then reframes your challenge to one that is more acceptable, and you have greater buy-in from the team, which then allows you to experiment and generate more innovative ideas. So those are the three things that I wanted to mention, just from one's own observations. Yeah, but thanks for that question, Lerato. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I see Dr. Mangisa again, so I'll take him in the absence of other colleagues asking questions, because obviously if he wants to ask in the others are okay, I must give him the platform or the opportunity to ask. But he will be the last one. After him, I will ask Yershen to respond to him, but also to give us his closing remarks. Then we'll close the session after that. Dr. Mangisa, over to you, sir.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Prof, for indulging me, man. I am taken, by the issues that Yershen is raising. I was about to ask Prof, but I guess Yershen has answered because while you are trying to experiment, as leaders, there is wastage of some sort. And from a perspective of what is this PFMA, you get told, I'm going to use these concepts loosely, irregular expenditure, fruitless expenditure, and wasteful expenditure. But I think he has answered me because I wanted to check with him, where is the balance between experimentation, because we are about to fail, vis-a-vis, these aspects, of measuring, financial application and execution of financial resources. But I think he has answered me. Where I wanted to go before he closes, he must address us, on the concept of empathy. As agile leaders, we need to practice empathy. And he said perhaps we need to engage on this as to when does it become too much and when does it become too little. I know as leaders, at some point in time, we need to be vulnerable so that we attract, the followers to us, so that there can be, an understanding, even from a social perspective, so that when we want them to perform and give us results, at least there is that, vulnerability or empathy. When is it too much? When is it too little? Yershen, thank you so much, Prof. And thank you to the delegates.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Yershen, if you can respond there, my brother, and then after your response, then you can just give us your closing remarks. Then we'll close the session after that. Thank you.
Thanks again, Dr. Mangisa. And absolutely. I think firstly, I think Prof also, you put it very nicely, that it's not a question of either or, but both and. So you can achieve both compliance and innovation. It is possible to do both. So, often the mistake is to have an either or mindset, compliance-driven environments, especially when you've got the Public Finance Management Act, etc. What we found useful is to separate your performance engine with your innovation engine. So your performance engine is still based on the compliance framework, which you can account for, but you keep your innovation engine separate so you don't mix oil and water. You've got the new ideas and the experimentation, which is reframed in terms of failure. And so you can account for that because many of us have research development. And so in the research, you are experimenting actually. And you can account for that. So it's always best to do that in compliance-driven environment, and that's working quite well for us. You can achieve both, and I think we've done that as Chieta over the years, with having both, our clean audits, our 100% performance, but at the same time, new innovative initiatives on green hydrogen, smart skill centers, etc., which were part of the performance engine and not part of the innovation engine, not the performance engine. This is a very interesting question, and Dr. Mangisa, I don't really, Prof, have the answer to that, but I think it's something, because agility, too much of empathy can be debilitating, if you're trying to be more agile. And And so you could have this, unfortunately, in terms of tackling the problems, an empathetic resonance that becomes debilitating for tackling the problems that you want to tackle. But it's about, I suppose, just being able to not ensure the empathy of being in the shoes of someone leads to a debilitating effect where you can't move as swiftly as you want to, whilst also connecting with someone and making the judgment call. So I think it's probably based on context and circumstance as well. Different teams have different levels of empathy. Different people require different, levels of empathy, of how you connect, how you take them on board. But the main thing, I think the main point I would make to Mangisa is that, at some point a decision needs to be made as well. And to say, maybe we have reached the ceiling here. So we therefore need to move so that we don't have this empathetic resonance of becoming debilitating to the extent that we can't tackle the problems that we want to tackle in our organization. So I think it's based on the organization, and there's no blanket type of unit measure or standard that we can certainly apply. And I think that's the norm, Prof, as well, when you're dealing with people. So there's not a unique formula or a code that we can apply. But I think the main point really is that you need it because you've got to have the buy-in from your organization, your people, in order to drive the agility as well. So that's my response. I think Dr. Mangisa on that question. Thanks, Prof.
Thanks, Yershen. On the issue of too much empathy, Dr. Mangisa, there is something in empathy they called hyper empathy. They always say that too much empathy, hyper empathy is really what we call too much empathy, which equals to disorder, what Yershen has said. Because in everything, actually, when people ask me what is the definition of a weakness, I always say that a weakness is an exaggerated strength. So empathy is a strength, but if it's too much, it becomes a weakness. Confidence is a strength, but if confidence is too much, it becomes arrogance. It becomes a weakness. Humility is a strength in leadership, but if you are too meek, you are too weak, it becomes a weakness. So, I mean, in everything, I think it's a matter of how do you really make sure that it's not that strength, guard against it becoming a weakness, as in empathy, or they'll call it hyper empathy, which becomes too much. And then once it's a hyper empathy, then it becomes what a weakness there. But anyway, thank you very much, my brother. Thanks, Yershen. Once again, thanks very much, my brother, for honoring us, for availing yourself. I know you are a very busy person. You could have been somewhere tonight, but with this masterclass lecture that you gave us, we will really going to read and reflect on it and remind ourselves on the presentation, both on your slides and also on your responses on this matter, agile leadership, because we need agile leadership in our organizations, in our companies, in our country. Probably, as you were saying, and I was thinking that there are so many challenges that we have. Probably if you could just have that more agile leaders, more innovators, we could really be nimble and try to move with speed and solve the problems that we have. But sometimes our leaders, they become too taking, that analysis paralysis, and then there's no speed, there's no move in terms of handling or tackling the challenges that we are faced with. So you have challenged us tonight, you have inspired us, you have empowered us to go out there and become agile leaders. So thank you, Mr. Play. Thank you so much, my brother. To everyone who joined us tonight, many thanks, especially to those who joined us for the first time. As I said earlier on, we meet every Wednesday. Please do join us again next week. We'll be having another powerful speaker and then discussing a great topic that we'll be having. Please check our YouTube channel and make sure that you subscribe there so that you will always get some notifications for new material that gets in there. Thank you so much. And the session is adjourned now until next week. Next week, Wednesday. Yes. Thank you so much. To all Christians, please enjoy your Easter weekend. And to everyone, please make sure that you are safe wherever you are. Those who will be going away for holidays, please make sure that you drive safely on the roads so that we can see you again next week, Wednesday. We really like to see you. Before I close, I didn't see that Siswezi Koza is here. Just to acknowledge her, Siswezi is part of us. She's here every Wednesdays, but it's very important just to say that Siswezi is a chairperson of Theatre Board. So how wonderful it is just to sit there and listen to her CEO giving us great stuff. So thank you so much. I just wanted to acknowledge you, Siswezi. See you next week. Next week, Wednesday. And
thank you.
Enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. And God bless you. And God bless Africa. Thank you very much. Bye.
Amen.